I want to clarify one thing. This is only 3 steps, and I had to have help of this, right? Well, when nobody's looking, I run up and down the stairs. Really. I want to sing a song. No. Anyway, the problem with balance, I have a balance problem. And the problem is, when you have your 2 legs and a cane, you have a tripod. If you have to lift your foot up to come up the stairs, it's a duopod. I think I invented that word. It's a duopod. Anyway, so that's why I need help up here. See, isn't it interesting that you came? Because you learn so much. Right. Okay. Oh, okay. Hold it back. I'm going to repeat a few things that I said the last time. Number 1, I don't really think you can teach anyone how to write. I think you can mentor them. Kay and I have talked about this, and she certainly taught. And we've talked about that. I think you have to have it in you. You have to want it more than anything in the world, because it is the loneliest thing you can do. You sit in a room by yourself. I once read that somebody said there's nothing to writing. You put a piece of paper in the typewriter, this is back in the typewriter days, in the typewriter, and you stare at it until blood appears on your forehead. And that's really kind of what writing is about. You have to be able to be by yourself and enjoy being by yourself. And you have to enjoy the writing. That's the whole thing. That's why I don't think you can teach somebody. You can't say to somebody, okay, I'm going to stick you in a room by yourself and you're going to write. No, you can't do it. It's absolutely impossible. You can mentor people, and I think workshops are wonderful because other people get to read your stuff and they can make suggestions, and it's all terrific. Anyway, I'm going to talk about, let me go back and say this. I can't tell anybody how to write. And I can only talk about my life experience and you know, what writing has done for me or how it's affected my life. When Bridie and Finn was published, it was first published in England. And I got a call from the publisher in London, and she said, we're going to fly you over to England so you can have your picture taken. I thought that was terrific. So they did. They flew me over, and I was there for a week, and I met all kinds of people, and it was really wonderful. And then I came back, and then they called me and said the picture wasn't any good. And I got a little worried about that, but it wasn't me. There were 6 of us together, the 6 people that were chosen for the W.H.Smith Award in England. And so I had to fly back to England. I mean, come on. I was a commuter. I went back to England, and I had a wonderful time again for another week. And that time, the book had come out, and I went to Harrods, and I went into the bookstore, and there, for the first time in my life, I saw my book stacked up on, can you imagine? Because I had seen one copy of the book once before at my mailbox. I had to walk about a city block down to my mailbox. And I opened the package, and there it was. It was a Penguin book. And there it was, Bridie and Finn by her. I literally jumped up and down at my mailbox. I mean, I don't think people were too surprised to see me do that either, because I probably jump up and down when any little good thing happens at my mailbox. So I had to go back to England again. And by then, I was on the underground, on the subway, and I saw people reading my book. Oh my God. It was just, you know, I did cartwheels up and down the car. But I came back from England, and in my mailbox was a letter from the Dyslexia Institute of England. And they were asking me if I would write one chapter of a round-robin book. And I thought, I have one book published, and they're asking me to write a chapter. I said, yes, absolutely. I wrote them a letter and said, yes, absolutely, I will do it. I'll be happy to do it. The book was called The Cruise. And I brought this up here because I can't remember people's names. Don't get nervous that I'm going to read a bunch of stuff, because I'm not. But there is a bunch of names. These are the people that ended up writing chapters. Ooh. There you go, I'm sorry. Just scream at me if I do that. Okay, these are the people that wrote a chapter for this book. Mae Vinci, for any of you who ever heard of her, Charlotte Bingham, Anita Berg, Bernard Cornwell, Josephine Cox, William Horwood, Susan Howich, Matthew Neal, Nicholas Ray, Murray Smith, Eileen Townsend, Joanna Trollope, and Ken Follett. I was a star already. One book. I wrote that one book. It was amazing. Well, I think what they did was they wrote to everybody, and these are the people that said yes to do it. Because later, a woman named Lady Fitzgerald, who was very, very nice, said to me, well, I don't want to burst your bubble, but she went in and she checked every stack of books in Harrods bookstore and wrote to all those agents of these people. And these are the only people who said yes. So it was purely accidental that they asked me to write the chapter. But I had a wonderful time doing it. The book, not so good. The editor said that it was very difficult to put it all together, because I really did have the advantage because I had worked in television by then. And I knew that the characters that were already developed by other writers before me were the characters that I had to stick with. Certain novelists just put in new characters because they had no idea, how to do it. Anyway, the book, it really didn't work. But, by the way, I have to mention one other thing. Ken Follett, I've only read one book of his, and it was Pillars of the Earth, which I loved. I thought it was great. But Ken Follett wrote a lot of spy, novels, high-tech novels, and I don't even get it. I can only work my computer for what I want. I don't know anything else. And Ken Follett, I heard this on NPR radio, has 90 million copies of his books worldwide in every language. 90 million copies of his books. So, the man who put this book together said to me when it was at the party, we had a party, I'll go back. We had a party on the Oriana. It was a ship, the last ship that was built by, I can't think of the name of the shipbuilder right now. But anyway, it was the last ship built. It was, I think, 16 stories high. It had room for 2,000 passengers. And they had a party for the book at the Oriana. I got home very late. I was staying with friends in London, in Wimbledon Park. And I got home quite late, and I said, when I came in, I said, I hope there were no messages. She said, well, there was one from a Lady Fitzgerald. Lady Fitzgerald said, call anytime, and that if I wanted a place to stay near Southampton, where the Oriana was docked, that I could come and stay at. I'm so sorry I got home late because I would have loved to have gone to Lady Fitzgerald's house just to see what it was like. Turns out Lady Fitzgerald was in the process of a divorce, and she was a nice Australian girl who had married Lord Fitzgerald, and I got all the gossip when I got to the ship. But I had to get up very early in the morning. I went to Waterloo Station, and I took the train down to Southampton, and there were people getting on the ship. Every single person that came on the ship had a private attendant that took care of everybody that got on that ship. It was sensational. So we went into the dining room where there was a spread for the writers and their families. Well, it was gold flatware, not silver. It was gold, all spread out this way and that way, as far as you could see, with each plate, which had a gold rim around it and the O for the Oriana. And Lady Fitzgerald said to me, if I make a mistake and pick up the wrong fork, just don't pay any attention. And she was right. I mean, it was incredible. I cannot tell you how many knives and forks and spoons about each side. So we had quite a wonderful time there. I met Josephine Cox, was one of the writers. I bought a book of hers when I came back because she was so nice to me. She said, you look like you're lost here. And I said, well, I feel like I'm lost. I'm the only person with no accent. But of course, I'm the only one who did have an accent. I was an American. Anyway, Josephine Cox was a working class lady in England. And her little husband was very working class. And she wrote a book. And it was published. And she became quite famous as she wrote historical bodice rippers, about these, I don't know, but I loved the book. But I loved her so much. She was so kind to me and so sweet and so generous that I'm sure it colored my appreciation of the book, but I thought it was wonderful. Anyway, the man who put all these chapters together and edited the book. Now, remember, Ken Follett. Ken Follett had 90 million copies worldwide. Said to me, there were two really good chapters. Yours and guess who? Ken Follett. Well, I thought, I could write anything for the rest of my life. It was the most extraordinary experience. I couldn't wait to get back to Wimbledon Park so I could say, he mentioned my name with Ken Follett. Are you kidding? How wonderful it was. Anyway, it was a great experience. The book, as I said, was not so good. But they assumed, because I lived at the time I lived in Hollywood, and they assumed, the Dyslexia Institute assumed that I knew everybody in Hollywood. So they wrote me a letter and said, would you be on the board now of the Dyslexia Institute in London? And I said, sure. I didn't know what I was going to have to do. And they said, now, if you could get us something of Tom Cruise or some Whoopi Goldberg. What? No, I don't know. Actually, I did try. I found out their agents, and I wrote letters to all of their agents saying that I wanted something of, Tom Cruise and Whoopi Goldberg and blah, blah. And I never heard from anybody. I didn't even hear from the agents. Nothing at all. So the Dyslexia Institute dropped me like a hot potato. I just didn't have what they wanted, that's for sure. But it was an incredible experience, and an incredible experience only because I was with all of these really, really important writers. And I was a kid from Charlton Street in central New Jersey, and it did not make any sense to me. Well, it didn't make any sense when I first saw my name on television. I thought, wait, that just can't be. That's me. I wrote a script, and it was bought. It was on Maude, and there was my name on television. I thought, there's something wrong with this. The world suddenly didn't make any sense at all. And it should have. I remember my father saying, that's my name. Because I left my middle initial out, and I left Junior off. It was just Harry Cohen. And my father kept saying, yeah, turn on the television, you see my name on there. He loved that. It's been a very, very interesting life, certainly, of being involved in writing. Working for Norman Lear was a fantastic experience. Norman had so many ideas, and he fairly sparkled, I'm not kidding you. It looked like there was a follow spot with them, following him all around the room. Whenever we had great meetings at his huge table. There was a huge table in his office, one end of his office. And we would have writers' meetings. Oh, thank you so much. And we would have writer meetings, and oh God, I can't think of the name of it. There was a woman that came in. Forget it. It's not important anyway. But we would talk about Mary Hartman, when we were doing it, and then I did 2 other shows for them. And we would discuss things, and it got very heated. People would have a real attitude toward what we could write and what we couldn't write. I only did it once, and I think I told this story the last time. Mary Hartman's sister got pregnant by a priest. It was a very weird show. Did anybody ever watch Mary Hartman? Oh yeah, of course. Well, you know how crazy it was. I mean,
It was weird.
the coach, he drowned in chicken soup. he fell forward in chicken soup, and he gasped, and he inhaled into his lungs chicken soup, and he died. Okay, so Mary's sister had a baby by the priest, and none of us wanted to write for the baby anymore. And we wanted to get rid of the baby somehow. And one of the writers, he wrote Dreamgirls, as a matter of fact, eventually. He left Hollywood and he wrote Dreamgirls, and it was an outrageously successful Broadway show. And he passed away when he was not yet 50. It was terrible. But he had an idea for how to get rid of the baby. And he said, we'll have Mary's sister go to the laundromat, and she'll accidentally put the baby with the laundry, and we'll have the baby bumped to death in the dryer. I said, no way, no, we're not going to have a baby bumped to death. This is so horrendous. So we actually did do it, though. We did have the baby come in with the laundry, but we had gypsies steal the baby. I never met a gypsy in my life, so I don't know whether they really did steal babies, but it was great fun. Anyway, Norman was wonderful, and I did 2 shows with him, 3 shows. And the third show was very interesting. Half of the show would be scripted, and it would be set up. The one episode I wrote was about assisted suicide, because they were very serious. Norman liked comedy thrown into very serious subjects. Well, half the show was scripted, and then half the show was the audience reaction to things. And it was a very interesting project, and I thought it was going to do something, but it didn't. It didn't work. I have no idea why. Maybe it was because everybody expected Norman Lear's stuff to be so funny, and then it would get there, and then there would be these very, very serious subject matter. So, I don't know. But anyway, I did that for quite a while. I was with Norman for about three years. And then I got Harvey Korman got a show of his own. And I had not yet worked on Carol Burnett, so I didn't know Harvey at the time. But it was so miscast. Harvey was perfect. Everybody else was totally miscast. They were serious actors who decided they wanted to do comedy, and they couldn't do it. Or comic actresses who wanted to do dramatic stuff, and they couldn't do it. And it just didn't work. I think it was on the air 2 episodes, which you had to be quick to see it. And then it died. And then the worst experience I had in television, and this is almost sacrilegious, is with Julie Andrews. Her husband, Blake Edwards, who did all those wonderful, Pink Panthers and 10 and several other movies. He didn't know how to do television. He simply did not know how to do it. He would spend all afternoon on something like, Julie got married in the episode, in one episode, and his daughter, who was really Blake's real daughter from a previous marriage, stood up at their wedding. Okay, and she had an iguana climbing over her head. Now, why she had an iguana climbing over her head, I don't know. But a whole day was wasted on the iguana. Well, you can't do that in television. You know, it's very, very controlled. Time it's a very controlled situation. And then he decided the iguana wasn't going to work, so he got a piglet. And he had a piglet. Well, that little pig, it didn't know what it was doing. Well, you know, they'd say, okay, take, and you know, start, and they'd start rolling something, and the pig would start screaming and squealing and everything. Why wouldn't it? So they had to stop again. And so Blake Edwards, who was a genius at making movies, did not know how to do a television. And Julie, you give her the script to read the first day, and she would say, she called her husband Blackie, isn't that a bit sitcom? Now, one of the writers on the show was about 11 months pregnant. She was enormous. She was sitting next to me. And when she said, isn't that a bit sitcom? This friend leaned over to me and said, it is a sitcom, you stupid woman. Poor Julie. I mean, she was okay. She was a nice lady, but she didn't know how to control the show. So that was, oh God. Terrible. I really feel like I do want to sing now that I get this book. No, I wouldn't subject anybody to that. Anyway, hello. You got kind of a good echo in here. That was about it. And when I did, the last thing I did was Carol Burnett. I loved Carol. The real Carol was like the person who did the questions and answers. That's what Carol was really like. You know, Tim Conway would come into the room and say hello to her, and she would fall on the floor laughing. And Tim Conway could do absolutely anything, and she thought he was the funniest guy alive. She was wonderful. I like her. Carol has a new show. She's playing the grandmother in a new sitcom. Anyway, she's quite a gal. Oh, by the way, there's something I saw in here by accident, because it was across the page from that list of names. This sounds a bit whimsical. Does anyone say bad things about butterflies? Like, here come the damn butterflies again. I have no idea why I wrote that. It certainly is not substance for a new novel. I don't know what it is, but I kind of liked it when I liked the second line, here come the damn butterflies again. So I thought that would be worth reading to you. Anyway, that's about it. I just wanted to tell the story of cruise, because that trip on the Orient, that whole thing was wonderful. Okay, that's it. Well, we'll try. Anybody curious about anything?
Yes, Jeremy.
It's a little bit of a compound question. I hope it's not too much. First, why do you think your first book didn't really work? Second, how did you fool yourself into thinking it did work at the time?
I have absolutely no idea what you just said. No, you just have to get a little louder, that's all. Because.
Okay. So I'm going to take this.
Oh, good.
So Jeremy, help me if I get it right. So basically he was asking the question on your first book, why didn't you think it went as well as you thought? And then later, it seemed like there was a time that maybe you thought it did better than that. How do you sort of correlate those together, or how did it evolve? Close enough?
Yeah, that's fine.
The first one, why didn't I think it was better than it was?
Well, you said in your speech you thought it didn't really work, at least in retrospect. I'm just wondering what was it about it that didn't really work, and how did you fool yourself at the time into thinking it did work when later on you realized it really didn't? I mean, it's just my impression that's what you said. I don't know. Isn't that your feeling about it? I mean, I thought that's what you said.
No.
Oh, I thought you said that looking back you thought it didn't really work, and I was just wondering what it was.
That was the cruise.
The chapter book. That was the chapter book.
Oh, it was
The chapter book.
Oh, yeah. When they put it all together, it did not work at all.
Oh.
And you know what they did? They said, when the book is finished, you cannot tell people what chapter you wrote. And I believe that. I haven't told anybody what chapter I wrote since then.
You can tell now.
No, I can't. No, if you make a promise, you keep it. That's all.
Only 2 good chapters anyhow, your phrase.
That's right. Mine and Ken Follett's. Did anybody else? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, this is kind of a fangirl question. 2 of the names you mentioned on that cruise, Maude and Susan Howard. I've read both of those gals. I wondered if you had any memories of either of those 2 writers, of meeting them.
No, I don't know.
So do you have any memories of those 2 gals that you said the 2 of her fan favorites that she had mentioned as people that were in that book? And their names one more time, Holly?
Maude and Susan Howard.
Oh, Maeve Binchy.
Yes, and Howard.
She never showed up at the party. How do you like that? And who was the other one?
Susan Howard.
Susan.
Oh, she didn't either. I'll tell you, Josephine Cox, Ken Follett, poor guy, only 90 million copies. That seems impossible, doesn't it? I mean, really, how could there be 90 million copies of one author? Of course, I don't know, but it just seems impossible to me. I was going to say, except it isn't one author, I was going to say the Bible has a heck of a lot more than 90 million, but it's a lot more than one author too. So, Shakespeare, there's probably more than 90 million in every language. But when I heard that on NPR, I thought, well, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. Because I was jealous. Yes.
Is TCM after you? Do they want to interview you?
No.
Turner Classic Movies.
Well, I don't really know that much about movies. I'm a movie buff. I love movies.
But your stories take in all of their stars.
Oh yeah. I don't know whether anybody else watches Murder, She Wrote. I watch it. I watch it because I want to see the people I knew in the old days,
Yes.
Do you know that everybody who worked on that show got $5,000? Everybody. It didn't matter how big a star you were or anything.
That's
And Madeline Rue was an actress with quite a good career ahead of her. And she got multiple sclerosis. And I have to say, Angela Lansbury was very good to her because she used her. You would see somebody in the library checking out a book, and it would be Madeline in your wheelchair. And she would have one line, and she got $5,000. And I love Angela Lansbury for doing that. She used the same people over and over, and in very different parts. But she was very, very faithful to everybody. I'm going to put this back. Everybody, yes. Go ahead.
In fact, I noticed the last time you spoke to now that you don't seem, when somebody calls you, you say yes to everything. And I wondered if you ever said, no, this does not sound like a good opportunity. Because the reason I'm asking is, like, I just have children's book, and I've had like 3 or 4 different companies ask me if they want to promote my book. It's on the phone, they call me. And I really haven't done anything. One, I went a little into it, and then I found out it was more expense than I anticipated. But when you talk, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds good, I think I'll do it. So I wondered if, you know, when you say this does not sound like a good opportunity, and this sounds like a great opportunity.
I'm going to just summate it for real quickly, and then any other questions, maybe we can come into the aisle and get you the microphone, since again, the acoustic's a little different. So basically, she was asking is, you had said that when people ask you different things, you said, well, oh, of course, yes. And she was talking about that people have asked her certain things, and she's not sure whether to say yes or not, or is there a time that you always say yes, or times, how do you be discretionary in that? What type of things? Is it, do you stick with your genre? Do you stick with different things? Is that fair, Rita?
No, I don't stick with genres at all. You know, I have, I'm trying to think right now. I tell you what I do, what I really like. I like character-driven stories. I like character-driven books. I'm not into anything high-tech or any of that. It turns me off because, you know what I do? I write about the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Because that was a time when, I don't know whether for you, but for me, life made sense. It doesn't make any sense at all now. But I'm 86 years old, and maybe when you're 86, you're not supposed to have anything make sense. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't understand it. I can't imagine young people growing up in this age. And the confusion, it's too horrendous for me. It's just horrendous. I loved, when I was born in 1931, I was never that aware of the you know, what was the horrible thing we all went through, the Depression. I wasn't aware of it. My parents put food on the table. The only thing is at Christmas time, you got one present. And it was usually a pair of pants that you grew into so you could fold them over in the front. They were so big for you, then you put a belt around them. But I really wasn't, it was a good time for me. It was a good time, even though it was the Depression. I didn't know it. I simply didn't know what was going on. My father was a hunter, but primarily to put meat on the table. And that's what we ate. My mother was a sensational game cook. She really knew how to cook it. And so I never felt deprived at all. When the war came along, and of course you all know I'm talking about the Second World War, the last non-divisive war that we had. My twin sisters went in the Navy because my father was too old and I was too young. But there had to be somebody doing something, and the twins, they joined the Navy. No, it all made, it was just a different different time. I know it was my time. I know it was all of our times who were of a certain age. We all generally had the same sense of responsibility to ourselves, and that's why I like to write about it, that's all. I write about it because it's a time that made sense to me, and I can recall it. I can recall the day the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And that was because I had been to a movie, and my best friend was Mort Brahm, and we were walking, and they had plowed the snow, and there were mounds of snow on the sides of the road, and we were walking along the top. That's what you did. Kids walk on the top of the mounds. And we walked home, and I walked in, and my mother was crying. It was Pearl Harbor. Well, we were two little boys. We thought it was fabulous. Can you imagine? Mort Brahm said, I tell you what, I'll go over to my house and I'll protect the street from this end of the street, and you'll protect the street from your attic on the other end of the street. And that's how we reacted to being at war. But it still made sense. Because there were soldiers, and you were protecting, and you were doing something. I don't know. I don't know. It was, yes.
Have you always wanted to write? Did you get a lot of support to do it? And what inspires you?
Okay, the first thing I wrote was a short story. And you know, this is going to end in me feeling sad, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and do it. My parents were wonderful. Wonderful. It was like, my mother was an orphan. My father quit school at 15 and joined the Army and lied about his age in World War I. My mother always said, and this was so great, she said, I am the most successful woman I know. She married the man she wanted. She got a house eventually because she was an orphan, and she went from one relative to another. That's what they did in those days. She graduated from college. She worked her way through dipping chocolates. She graduated top of her class. Everything, I had everything. I grew up in a town that was perfect. I had a lake and a canal, and I had the university there if we wanted anything that sophisticated. I had the woods to run in. I had been a very, very lucky man. And I had nothing to regret. You know, I feel so bad for people who, I can't say I had everything, because I certainly didn't. I started out as an actor. I wanted to be an actor, you know. And I worked all the time. I was lucky. I was very lucky. My whole life has been lucky. But I didn't get everything the way I wanted it, certainly. But I do feel like I've had a very successful and at the same time a very lucky life. So, and my parents were, both of them, were very good about writing. When I wrote the first, the first thing I wrote was Tanya. Okay, Tanya was a boy, number one, and it was a girl's name. But Tanya and Guide. And it was about a little Indian boy who ended up in the North Woods and survived and trapped ducks, and he did all kinds of wonderful things. When my parents died 11 days apart. Terrible. I can't even talk, I'm terrible. Okay. When my father died first, he had Parkinson's. And then my mom died. She took care of everything and sat down and died. But I found everything I had ever written in my bureau drawer. You know, my mom kept everything I had ever written. And I came home to my little house in Cherry Valley, and I didn't know how to grieve. And I burned everything. And I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why. Okay, take a deep breath, Harry. Okay, and we'll go on. Anybody else have anything? No? Yeah.
I just finished watching the series of Albert Einstein and of his life, and I was wondering if you could share any more stories of living next door to him. And this series portrayed him as quite the ladies' man.
Well, I didn't live next door to him. I lived in the same town, and I lived a few blocks from him. And I didn't know anything about his personal life. And I think I told, if you heard it before, did you hear, were you at the other?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, then you heard me say that my mom hated the fact that Einstein didn't wear socks. And I don't know why that so disturbed her, but she didn't like the idea that the man didn't wear socks. And, people would rave about how brilliant he was, and, and my mom would say, yes, theory of relativity, oh, absolutely, but he didn't wear socks. And she couldn't give up the fact that that man did not wear socks. You would see, I remember I was at my sister's house. My sister and her husband lived they had veterans projects in our town. And when the war ended and people came home with their husbands and wives and everything, they moved into these little, really, really nice little houses. And I remember Einstein getting out of the car in front of Anne's and going into the hospital. And he stepped out and I thought, oh my God, that man doesn't have socks on. So I inherited that from my mother. And no, it really didn't bother me. But the fact that, I never knew anything about him being a ladies' man. But I do remember one thing. I thought about this later. My sisters and I, okay, this is kind of interesting, I think. Well, I don't know whether it's interesting, but maybe. My sisters and I used to pick violets in the springtime, and we sell them at the house party weekends at Princeton University. They didn't have fraternities. They had what they called houses. You could belong to the Ivy Club and the Cannon Club and all these. And there was one street with these magnificent buildings that were the clubs. And I'm telling you, half the town worked in those clubs. I mean, that's how they made their living. And the twins and I would pick violets in early spring, and when they had house party weekends, and the girls would come over, and they'd have these lovely weekends. We sold violets out on the street, and we were so good. This is how good we were. Really good kids when I think of it. We saved that money that we made in the spring to buy Christmas gifts. And we didn't spend it. I think my mother said, if you spend 1 penny of that, and that's why we didn't spend it. But we did. But Einstein played the violin. Did they say that in the show?
Yes.
Yeah. He played the violin, and I don't know how my sisters and I got into their living room, and the man played the violin for us. But I have no idea how we got there, or why we were there, but there was, yes, Einstein playing the violin. But they did mention that in the...
Oh, yes, you need to see
Really?
that series. Very good.
Now, you know what? I thought I dreamt that. I thought I made that up. I swear to you. And I've never told anybody
There's
that
10 episodes, and it's about his life, and several times he's playing the violin.
Tell where to find it then.
Yeah.
You can get on Netflix.
Now I feel better. I thought I was going nuts thinking that Einstein played the violin for us.
It was very well produced by Ron Howard and Brian Grazer through Image Entertainment.
Yeah.
And it was on National Geographic. And
Right.
10 episodes.
It was called Genius, I think.
Genius, yes. And
He was, he didn't wear socks. So.
Did they mention that?
he wanted a bohemian life. That's
Yeah,
what he said.
exactly.
We have time for one more question.
Have you or did you ever write a draft screenplay for Bridie and Finn?
Well, I wrote a screenplay. The Shirley Jones and Len Cariou did it. It was about, she was the caregiver, and he was an Alzheimer's victim. And it won all kinds of awards. And it was wonderful, because I have all these strange little awards, and I don't have any idea why I got them. Because they're like from, I can't think of the names of them, but they're the most peculiar awards in the world, and I got all this bunch of awards that were sent to the producers of the movie, which was Bob Hope's daughter, adopted daughter, Linda Hope, and Nancy Malone was the director and one of the producers. But they put all these little awards in a box and sent them to me after it was over. You know the way I got to do that movie? I got out of my car in a parking lot to go into a bookstore. And I ran into Nancy Malone and Linda Hope. And they said, and Linda had read an article on a plane coming back from New York, from New York to California. And it was about Alzheimer's disease, because this was 25 years ago. And people, you weren't paying too much attention to it yet. Thank God they did, eventually. But anyway, they said, you want to write a movie? Yeah, sure. And that was it. That's how I got to write that movie. And it won nice awards. So, but they're strange little awards. I wish I could think of the names of some of them, because it was like the John Muir Award. What does John Muir, the photographer, have to do with a movie about Alzheimer's? I just couldn't figure that out at all. Anyway, but I was glad I got that. But that was the only one I've ever tried, the only movie I've ever tried. So, because it's an entirely different form from television. That's television as a friend of mine once said, yeah, television is double-spaced, and, you know, screenplays are single-spaced. That's the difference. But it's not. There's more to it than that. But anyway. Anybody else?
What was the name of the movie again?
The name of the movie again?
Oh, it was called There Were Times, Dear. Yeah.
I want you to join me in thanking Harry for sharing his time with us and his memories and his inspiration